Good evening and welcome to the start of our Holy Week reflections from St. Helen's Parish Church. We're delighted that you are with us. Our reading this evening is from Mark chapter 11, verses 15 to 19. Then they came to Jerusalem, and he, Jesus, entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling and those who were buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves, and he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. He was teaching and saying, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." And when the chief priests and the scribes heard it, they kept looking for a way to kill him, for they were afraid of him, because the whole crowd was spellbound by his teaching. And when evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Imagine for a moment that you are travelling along with Jesus. It's quite tiring and really hot, but there is something special going on here. You've just been part of the amazing scenes as he rode that small donkey into the city of Jerusalem, and the crowds went crazy for him. You've stayed overnight in Bethany and now are going together back into the city. What next, you may be thinking? Or maybe you've been wondering, why all this extra walking in and out of the city? Why haven't we just stayed in Jerusalem? Maybe you asked Jesus. Maybe you just assumed that everywhere was booked up and busy in time for the Passover festival. But maybe in the days that are to come, you might look back and realise that Jesus had known all along what was going to happen in this week, and that he was in charge of all the practicalities and all the timings. The religious leaders were trying to kill him, but it would be in God's timing, not man's. Jesus would die in God's plan, not man's. And so you all get back into Jerusalem and head straight for the temple. That's quite normal, it's what you usually do. But what happens next is a total surprise. Jesus' reaction to the temple traders. He's never done this before, and presumably they're always there, hanging around in the temple. Is it just particularly busy because of the festival? Is it a slightly sickening view of consumerism gone mad? We've all known recently what that has looked like. And Jesus' reaction is often used to justify righteous anger. And it is a violent action, as he drove out, overturned, would not allow. John's account in chapter 2 tells of Jesus driving the traders out with a whip made of cords and knocking over all their money. Is this an angry reaction to those who will turn every situation to their own financial advantage? During this coronavirus pandemic, there are stories of those trying to scam money out of other people's fears. And there was a story of a doctor who has made a fortune selling testing kits to those wealthy enough to pay his massively inflated prices. And, alarmingly, a church in London selling virus protection oil and red yarn. I know, you couldn't make it up. And Jesus makes clear his attitude to this kind of thing as he contrasts what should be a house of prayer made into a den of robbers. But maybe, as events unfold, it is possible that this wasn't Jesus' reaction to a situation that he just came across, because temple traders were not an unusual sight. Maybe this was a clear statement from Jesus, because this is the same temple with its rules and regulations, expectations and restrictions about who could go where and do what. Women and non-Jews could only go so far, men could go a little bit further, and only specially selected priests into the actual presence of God. This is the same temple where a few days later, as Jesus dies on the cross, the curtain, the physical and symbolic separation of the people from God, is torn in two from top to bottom. So perhaps, is Jesus making a statement about removing barriers between people and God? Are the temple traders perhaps an example of another barrier? Don't think of approaching God before you've bought your doves, or are properly equipped with a goat. Don't, whatever you do, go before God empty-handed. Is this Jesus pointing towards, foreshadowing what will be the total removal of barriers between God and his people, as Jesus' sacrifice and death make it possible for us to boldly approach our God? Is it a clue to what is about to happen? For some of us, life during this coronavirus pandemic and in isolation may have slowed down and got a bit simpler, as we have to consider what the essentials are now for our shopping list and what might be considered a good reason for leaving the house. Might it be helpful for us to see this time as a clearing of the ways, of a simpler route for each of us to come directly to God, just as us? No roles to play, no rotas to fulfill, nothing to contribute or to provide. To come empty-handed because that's okay. To come with no barriers, but just to be with God, so that in these times, which are completely under God's timing and God's plan, wherever we might be, can be a house of prayer. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Thank you for joining us for our first Holy Week reflection. Good night. God bless.